Hey, and we're live. Welcome, everyone,
Hey.
to Junkies episode 188, where the Junkies collide with the D-Gens. Oh, yes, that's right. We're doing a little takeover, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good. We've got Tommy B, myself, Scott Sidlow, and the guest tonight, Mr. Nordboy Takes. Mike, what's up, brother? Tell everybody who you are.
What's up, brother? So my name is Mike. I'm at Nerdboy Takes, and I actually run the Dynasty Degens podcast. We have a Discord. We have the Another Fantasy Show. I have Devi Degens, and we are collabed with Player Profile currently. So we are in their little umbrella. So you can find Dynasty Degens anything under Player Profile. So if you go over there, Theo is actually the guy that you want to go to if you want to find our stuff over there. But yeah, we talking backstage. I love this. I remember I was on the show a couple times in the earlier years, and it was like, my name's Mike, and I'm a trade addict, and I had to be like, yeah, I'm a trade addict, and I've come from the streets, and I lost my wife, I lost my kids, and I was like, I had the birth of my child, and I couldn't even be there because I just traded too much, and it's like
Exactly.
So like this intro is great, and I'm glad I don't have to do that, so I appreciate it.
Junkies, trade addicts, degens. I mean, it's all in our blood. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, hey, this is how obsessed we are. I mean, like, if you think about it, 6% of the season is already over. I mean, we've already just wrecked 6% of the season. It's gone. So now we're on to the final 94%. So, you know, what's gonna happen? I mean, is week one, you know, really that important? I don't know. I think I've pretty much learned to throw everything out for the most part, except for Tank Bigsby. I just gotta say, why is he all of a sudden look like an NFL running back? Because he was awful last year. So I don't know. That was weird. So that's like my only takeaway from week one is all my Bigsby shares might be saved, or maybe I should sell them all right now. I don't know which one. But I try not to make any sweeping, you know, conclusions or freak out. And, you know, I think our listeners are pretty smart too, because between the 3 listener leagues, we didn't have any trades in the last week, right? So I think everybody kind of hung in there, didn't panic. We're still sticking to our process, sticking to our builds. So that's good to see. Although, Tommy, we did try to move some in Junkies 3. So that's still on the table for the folks in that league. But
have you guys been, sorry to cut you off, have you been doing so many trades? Like, have you guys done any trades even outside of the Junkies leagues? Like, what's been going on with
Tommy,
you guys?
go. This is your time to
I've
shine.
probably made 30 trades this week over the last few days.
You're gross, man. You're gross.
It's the best time of year because there are enough people who think they're still in it where you can sell Jordan Mason to a second to probably 2/3 of the league, to where if Joe Burrow is struggling, you can throw 2 first and you can snag him this time of year because people aren't pushed into rebuilding windows yet. And you just got to give them that nudge. I just think right now is the most fun time of the year where the points matter, where the lineups matter, but you can also get a lot done that you couldn't just 2 weeks ago. I don't know, Scott, are you seeing the same thing in your leagues as well?
Yeah, I agree. People are kind of ready to wheel and deal, whereas they were maybe just holding there for the last wait until the season hit. So yeah, I mean, I think that makes some sense. But at the same time, I think you kind of gotta take advantage where you can, but also let's not throw out all of our priors and just be like, okay, it's week one, it's all over. I think you already kind of knew which direction your team was going in each league, and then now you got to see if you could take advantage.
Mike, I had a thought.
Island games, it's huge, right? Huge impact. Everybody's watching these Thursday night, Friday night games. You know, there's a big impact coming off of that.
Totally. Mike, I had a thought I wanted to bounce off you. I have been buying at the top of the tiers. So trying to get the elite guys, the really good players, the difference makers to set the table for my season. And I'm trying to sell from the bottom of the tiers, from the consumable products that people are willing to, for some reason, take on right now. When you're making trades, if you're making trades early in the season, Does that happen with you as well? Or is it just kind of a hodgepodge of buys and sells? What do trades look like from whatever you're getting on the receiving end?
I guess it depends. So initially, it depends on my build. Do I think that I have a team that is going to absolutely compete? I already have that idea in my head when I start a league. If it's a startup or if it's something that's been going on for 5-6 years, I assess that immediately. Like before even week 1 starts, I decide, okay, I'm at the top or I'm at the bottom. And if I'm at the bottom, I'm going to liquidate any asset that I have that's going to be like anything that is going to benefit somebody else. So if like I'm like, okay, like I have I don't know, a Singletary or somebody that I think is never going to have that long-standing value, he's going to get moved before he even touches the field, because I don't ever want his value to just dip down lower than it is. But if I'm going up, I will go for players that I think will dip in my mind. But I think will still have that long-standing value in others' minds. So like Puka is somebody that I think is extremely talented. I love Puka. I think he's somebody that will benefit your roster for years to come, but I don't think he's going to benefit you in the way that you think he's going to benefit you. I think he's going to be a Devontae Smith type deal. You know what I mean? Like he's going to be a good guy that could be a back end maybe a wide receiver 1, but closer to like a mid wide receiver 2. We'll have some boom weeks. We'll have some good weeks, but he's never going to be that CeeDee Lamb, that, AJ Brown, that guy that's going to dominate and be that alpha. Puka is a very, very good player, but I don't think he got that alpha status his rookie year because, Kupp was out. Stafford was just really trying to maintain his contract and show that he was ready to, start a new year. What do they have? They have to compete. Like, what are they didn't have any picks. They were just like, okay, like this year is the year that they might be able to rebuild, but they had to be in compete mode. So like Stafford was going to be like, okay, here we go. Like we're going for it. So like if I have a Puka, I think I'm going to tear up all day. And I'm going to go for a CeeDee Lamb, or I'm going to go for an AJ Brown, but I'm going to do that before the season starts. I'm going to do that way before anybody even sniffs out the fact that Puka's going in the mid second or early second. He's going in front of AJ Brown. So in some leagues early on in the season, I could get AJ Brown plus. I'm sorry, I could sell Puka for AJ Brown plus. I actually sold Puka for AJ Brown in a second. I view these guys above certain players, but it's consensus that doesn't really believe in that. Like they don't think that Puka they saw his rookie year. He's going to be above AJ Brown because of his age. And there's an ageist factor that goes into that. And I play the game. I think there's more specifically, I think there's no blanketed statement that I think I can answer that question with, but I judge my leagues and I figure out where they're at. And then I find out, who loves this player, who hates this player, who I can put on the block and then get some interest from and then play off of that. It's really about like the hot pot timing of everything more than, just like a specific standard that I live by and I go by. I don't just have a game plan. I let the game kind of play itself out before I decide what I'm going to do.
Can I ask a follow-up there? Because I'm really fascinated by this. Is there a cone of priorities or some sort of tiering of priorities? Because we can't spend all day, maybe we can. We can't spend all day sending out trade offers and counters and really digging into the dynamics of every single manager, where we think they stand versus what they think. For me, it's almost a prioritization, saying, I want to do what matters for my teams the most. I want to optimize the time that I'm spending sending these offers out. And so part of that is, yes, getting rid of players that have these shorter term windows, but mostly focusing on the players that are likely to matter come week 14 through 17, the weeks where you're not facing a random team, you're facing a good team probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think a schedule is maybe something that you can look at haphazardly because you are also judging these teams based off of their last year's stats. You know, like you're looking at a defense and an offense because they were good last year, but you really don't know what they're going to be this year. You have no idea what that defense is going to be. And I think it's a silly way to just judge, okay, week 17, they have the Browns and, oh, you know, Deshaun Watson's awful. And I think he's still going to be awful. And that's a bad example. But, you know, if he's suddenly very good, that offense is not a defense you want to play against. And it's, you know, you want to go off of last year to this year, you're going to have egg on your face most of the time. So it's, I'm not necessarily going for trades early on the season for players that have good week 17s or 16s or have a good playoff schedule, because you generally don't even know. And if anybody that says they know what their schedule is going to be like, is just, you know, blowing smoke, because I don't think you're going to be able to tell what Miami's defense is going to be week 7 from week 1 or week 2. You know, it just doesn't happen. I've seen massive turnarounds from teams that you didn't even think were going to be good. And then vice versa. I think, you know, if you looked at a CJ Stroud in that offense and you said the Texans were going to be an elite offense, and you were going to always look at the defense playing against them and say, hey, like, I'm going to stream whoever's playing against the Texans because their wide receiver 1 is Tank Dell, who is 5'7" and 130 pounds, soaking wet. And look at what happened. Like, it's like nobody knows what the hell's going to happen. So I think you can't really judge a trade off of projections and what you think the experts think and this and that. It's just, you know, whoever, Bryce Young or was the QB1, and look how the Panthers look right now. It's, I don't know. Don't look at that. I can't stress enough that you can't project. And if you can, I think my hat is off to you. Like, good job. Like, good for you. I think you guessed well, but that's you didn't do an assessment, and you didn't break down pie charts and stuff for that assessment. I think you just really like did a good guess. But yeah, my trades are, hey, I just go off of what I know. Like, I know that AJ Brown's an elite talent. I know CeeDee Lamb's an elite talent. I know that Garrett Wilson is absolutely elite, and he's definitely not in a great spot right now. And I think if, you know, Aaron Rodgers does find his feet and he does kind of develop, and I think he's a little rusty right now in general, even as a veteran, I think Garrett Wilson will absolutely have like a top 8 finish right now. You know, these are guys that I think are solid that I will absolutely trade for. But when it comes down to like that second tier, third tier, and I'm saying they have a good schedule, or if they are propped up because of injuries or anything, like, none of that is a guarantee, and it's all a guessing game. So I can't solidify a trade based off of guesses. I have to really trust my process, and that's really what I do. And I don't even know if that answered your question, but I've just, you know, I hope it did.
I love it. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense to me. So, I mean, you know, that's all that matters, right? It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. I want to ask you guys about, you know, we don't get into a lot of player takes, but we want to follow processes and go after guys. And so Puka, you know, you mentioned him earlier, you know, he's out right now. He's on IR for at least 4 games. So is that a guy that you want to target? Do you consider him the type of player that you want to go after? I mean, typically any of those top tier players that go out, I mean, I want to go get them, but it's so early, like it just happened. So I don't know if, you know, there's not really anything to go off of to say like, oh, I don't know how he's going to perform this year. So it's a guy that I'm a little wary of just from that standpoint. And then you add in the fact we didn't see a ton from him before he got hurt. But my process in general is to go after those guys. Like, let me go find, you know, the similar players in that range, in that tier, and let's go buy them up. Or even, you know, kind of those reloading, retooling teams that I want guys for the future, but not really scoring points right now. You know, he's not gonna be out for the season, but at least, you know, in the short term, he's not really scoring points. Maybe then you could flip him later. But Mike, is that a kind of guy you would target? Is that a typical strategy you would take?
Yeah, I think going and taking advantage of values is what I always try to do. If somebody that is really, I call it a redraft brain, like you are constantly thinking about the wins, the points, you have to get this now. And, Tommy, what you spoke on earlier was trading Jordan Mason for a second. I think that's a lot of that redraft brain when it comes to week one. I mean, I don't care. Like I was telling you guys backstage, I do not care if I lose week one and maybe lose week two or I start 0-2. Like there's no panic there. If I start 0-7, I'm going to start selling all my players for first and just saying, we're just going to do this over again. But until then, it's not like I'm making crazy moves and I'm moving off of them. But if you know that somebody's like that, if somebody has Puka and they're drinking the juice a little bit. I think I just spoke on Puka while you were away, but I just said, I think he's really good. I think he's going to be a great asset to any fantasy team moving forward, but I don't think he's going to give you that elite scoring ability. I think he's going to probably be closer to a Devonta Smith, like in that range of a high-end wide receiver too, like somebody that you would probably place in like the wide receiver 12, 13 range, like just outside of a wide receiver 1. But I don't think he's going to be I don't remember where he finished, like wide receiver 3 or 4 last year, but everyone has him as the 3rd or 4th wide receiver taken in most dynasty startups. And that's okay if you think that that's where he's going to be, but I think he's closer to like a 4th or 5th round starter.
Yeah, you mentioned the names that are going around him too, right? Like so Jalen Waddle, Rashee Rice, Devonta Smith, like that's kind of that same tier there as far as value wise. None of those guys are the guy on their team. So I think that makes some sense. But I wonder if, as Cooper Kupp eventually ages, I don't know, he looked pretty damn good last week, but at some point he's getting older here. And, I guess maybe then you're getting more into the player take of saying, I don't believe he could be elite. But I don't know, he could be the one on that team at some point. He obviously did it last year. So I would be more inclined to trade like a Devonta Smith for him, because taking a Smith out of my lineup for the next 3 weeks isn't really, I'm not really losing much there. I can replace that most likely. At least for the next, in the short term. And if I can get something on top, or if I can upgrade a pick, or if I can get any RB on a 53 or whatever it is I want to get thrown in, like, I think that would be the type of trade I'm more inclined to make. Tommy, what about you?
Well, here's part of the arc of Puka that's challenging is the person who drafted Puka or picked up Puka off of waivers early last year. They had found money, right? So they were probably someone who drafts wide receivers heavier than the average dynasty player or their average league mates in that given league. Maybe they sold Puka. Let's say that they did. So that person bought on the way up. They saw the production. They went through an entire offseason with this player on their roster. If they're a contending team, it's too early to sell off an asset like Puka because we don't have a clear timeline. And even if we did, let's say it's 6 weeks plus 3 to ramp up. You can still be in the playoffs with Puka Nacua in prime form by the time the playoffs roll around. So he's not a tradable asset then. If you're rebuilding, he's young enough where it's really difficult to pry away Puka Nacua from somebody who's trying to intentionally lose and not score points. So if you look at the trade databases out there, he's one of the least traded players who had a changed situation this week. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think now is the time to necessarily try to pry that asset away from the manager. I think you wait 3 or 4 weeks and then you make your move. When the pain is starting to set in of not having this player in your lineup, where we have more defined roles as managers, who's rebuilding, who's contending, who's somewhere in the middle. And that's when the pressure point really ramps up, in my opinion. He's just not an asset that's moving right now. And I think that market is telling us we shouldn't be pressing our managers who roster Puka to make a deal because it's just going to make them further entrenched.
So while I completely agree with that, we were talking earlier about, throwing, Mike and I were like, hey, whatever, week 1, we don't care what happens. I don't care if I lose all my leagues. And you were like, well, but there's only so many weeks you have to win. Right. And so like, CMC, and you made a great point in saying if you have CMC, your goal is a bye,
Yes.
not just a playoff team, right? And so maybe it's a little bit different with Puka, but like, doesn't that, say like, hey, this is, every week that he's out, you don't have those points, right? So the people that play with the mindset of, and there's a lot of people out there. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of, I would say it's maybe close to 50-50. A lot of these guys preaching like it's always win now mode. We're always trying to win now. We're always win. So like, aren't they in more of the mindset of like, let's get rid of Puka if we ever think he's going to be elite anyway, and let's just put points in our lineup today? Like, I'd rather take advantage of that.
That's the difference between running back and wide receiver, though, isn't it? Like Christian McCaffrey, there are only maybe 5 running backs in the entire NFL that on their best week can match Christian McCaffrey on his average week. There are a lot of wide receivers out there. Scott Connor talks all the time about the saturation theory, how we have probably too many good wide receivers to where production curves flatten out after, depending on your scoring settings, about 15 wide receivers. And so those are the only ones that really matter. And Puka is certainly in that range, but it's pretty easy to get into a second or third of those 15 wide receivers that do matter. It's significantly easier than getting into Christian McCaffrey even today. Right now with the Achilles tendonitis, it's still a challenge to pry away a Christian McCaffrey share, because I've been trying and I've only been able to get 1 in 40 leagues.
Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I like where your head's at with that. What other, I know you were telling us about a trade earlier with Burrow. So you're able to get him for 2 firsts. Is that, now I know obviously in that particular league, you have a strategy that you're going after. If you weren't doing that strategy, is that still something you would be willing? Is that still a trade you'd be willing to make? Is the 2 firsts for Burrow?
I think it depends. It's what is your goal with those 2 firsts? If you were to draft those 2 players today, what would a positive outcome be? To me, it would be Joe Burrow. I would love to have 5+ years of really strong, if not elite production at the quarterback position. I would pay 2 firsts for that 9 months from now. So I'll certainly do it today. You have to be careful with these types of trades, though. You don't want to do that for, let's say, a Tua or a Dak right now, because we're playing a value game as well, along with the points. And so I want to be very cognizant of the fact that if I'm going to spend 2 firsts in week 1, it needs to be a value insulated asset as well as one that can be highly productive. Mike, what are you doing with your first round picks right now? Are you inclined to spend them? Will you hold them until mid-season?
I think you actually have a pretty decent idea of your picks as of right now, but there's so much variance when it comes to this stuff. And I think that's like the echo that I've really like had in my mind when it comes to certain questions that we've had so far. But, like I don't know, like a first round pick right now, can you really project it? Like, can you really just say this is a early first or a late first? And then do you not think that the player that you're selling, like as far as, okay, you trade 2 firsts for Burrow and you said these picks are early. Do you have a good assessment of the teams that have these first round picks? And do you think that they are not going to be able to trade into an earlier pick or a later pick, should I say? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think if you traded my pick, I would view that as you're disrespecting me. And if you trade my first round pick, I'm winning the league and I'm just making that egg on your face like all day. Like if you trade my pick, I am absolutely going to win that league. And there's no way I'm not going to, because if you're telling me that this pick is going to be very valuable, I'm going to prove to you that pick is not valuable. So I don't know how your league mates are, because I think if you were in a league with me and you traded my first, I'm making that like, okay, like the dude that got my pick, I'm going to say that he got Burrow for the 110, 110, 111, 112, something, something's very late. And I think it's more about knowing your leagues and then understanding the pick value. But if I have a team that has that win now talent, if I'm looking at a dwindling window, I don't know if I do trade my first because I think like I want to win, but I also don't want to leave an orphan. Like I think that the community in general has a very bad epidemic when it comes to, and I don't like using that word, but like when it comes to guys that build these great teams without picks and then they just say, I'm good. Like I'm going to just go to this startup and I'm going to just say, hey, maybe somebody else wants to take this team. I'm busy. I just had a kid. I'm like
Any excuse.
I thought this kid was a dog, but like the dog is actually a kid and the kid's actually a dog and it's too much. And,
I get that,
there's
man.
a lot
I
of people
do.
in the industry that they get busy and they just say, hey, like I'm going to just sell my picks. And I don't want to be that guy, man. Like I hold my picks until I know. Like if I'm in like week 8, week 9, I say I need to sell this pick to get that guy that I think is going to send me over the edge and make me win. Like I sold my pick last year for Christian McCaffrey, and I was like, let's do it. Like we're gonna cook, and it worked out. But like I like to gamble later in the season and then hold my chips early in the season, if that makes sense.
It really does. I will say that I am the orphan adopter, not leaving these teams on the front step of the nunnery. I've only done 2 startups ever, and I have over 40 teams. So I understand and can empathize with
Too
the fact
much.
that some of
Too much.
these orphans are left bereft of picks. That said, like it's really great currency to start to create gravity to affect your league mates in ways that they're unwilling to, because maybe they're waiting until week 9 and I want to get out to a hot start. I want to push a few more folks into a rebuild and really try to get that buy. So I think that there's definitely viable strategies on both sides of this fence. It seems that we're on exact opposite ends of it, though.
I don't think so, because I said it's very league dependent, and I think we probably could be like good trade partners based off of what I see and then how I view the league. And I think so. We have to just preface this with like most leagues do last 3 years, and we have to accept that. Like if you go into a league and you're like, okay, this is my first year, there's no forever leagues. Like the longest league that I'm in is 12 years right now. And I've been playing fantasy for over 20. And it's like, there are good leagues that will stay, but like 9 times out of 10, it depends on the commission. And now I think I only commission leagues that I'm in. Like, I'm like, okay, I have to be the commissioner. I have to have that final say. Like I'll never let a league die. Like I promise you that. I think that's like my dying promise to everybody, that like leagues will never die with me. I'll find a way. Like we'll figure this out. We'll find a way to keep this alive. But I don't think a lot of commissioners feel that way, because it's more of a headache to leave leagues to just. I think people just like think it's easier to just like get rid of it most of the time. So I don't know if I have that longevity idea that like, okay, we're going to just like, okay, buy up 27 first rounds and nothing matters and everything is set in place. And I'm going to have this great roster in 2028, 2029. And it's like, all right, the league can die. You can die. Nothing's promised. So I don't care. Like, I'm just going to like send it and hope for the best. But I don't mind building for next year. I'm not building for 2031. Like that's crazy. I'm not spending my money to just hang around and hope for the best, like $50, $100 leagues where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to wait. I think this is fun to spend $500 to win $800 and then make a $300 profit. I don't want to do that. I'm not like hey, we're going to win right now, but I want to win very soon. If I'm going to rebuild, I want to like win next year, not way later.
Yeah. I want to run a scenario by you guys that, and I guess maybe we can even substitute Tua in for this, but I have a few teams that I actually kind of see this in every league. If you look at the team that has like the number 1 pick, and so let's say the Caleb Williams team, so they have Deshaun Watson and Kirk Cousins and Caleb Williams. And now if you want to substitute Tua based on what we just saw into any of those other spots there, if those are your quarterbacks, what do you do now? Like, what do you, Watson's not looking good. It's not looking like he's coming. It's been like 4 years since the guys look good. Cousins, whether he's aging or maybe that could be Daniel Jones or maybe it's Tua. And then now you've got this young guy, this Caleb Williams, and you had so much hope. And then I know it's only 1 week, but like a lot of people are already like so depressed. And it's just like, it's Chicago. So they're probably going to find a way to mess it up. But if you have like, that's your quarterback room, right? And you know how important quarterbacks are in Superflex. Like, what do you do with that? You've tried trading Watson for years. You can't move him. Your cousin share isn't worth anything, or, your Daniel Jones share or your Tua share in this case. All you really have now is that hope with Caleb Williams. Are you like stuck for the year? Like what can you realistically do? You can't move any of these guys. Caleb's probably the only guy with any sort of, and again, you could put Jaden Daniels in there if you want, whatever, but just a young quarterback that you acquired because you had a high pick because your quarterbacks suck, basically. So when you have that room, regardless of the rest of your team, unless it's an absolute juggernaut, you're pretty much not competing. Like, you might be in the middle if you have a really strong, roster, but probably not based on if that's your quarterback room, right? And I have a couple of teams like this, and I kind of see as I go through a lot of my leagues, like the Caleb Williams team kind of has that scenario in quite often, right? So what do you do with that team? Like, where do you go? Like, do you try to tear down from Caleb? Do you try to, you literally can't. I actually have a league where I tried trading Watson for a 3rd round pick at one point just to see if somebody would actually take it. I got declined on every single one of them. They wouldn't even take Watson for a 3rd round pick.
I would take Watson for a 3rd round pick. I would do the draft. I would say I would absolutely take Watson for a 3rd round pick, because
I would too.
Even when it comes to a Superflex league, you know what I mean? I don't like Watson as a human. I don't like Watson as a fantasy player at all, but there is a relative upside in that offense to maybe have some decent games. And he showed that last year. Like, he was definitely decent in a few games. And that's above any 3rd round pick you're going to get.
But you still can't move him. Like, you cannot trade him. I just saw one of the funniest things. Our friend Shane, we're in this Dynasty Hot Sauce League. And after, I guess right away after week 1, he sends out, Watson for like Derek Carr, like Watson in a 4th for Carr in a 5th or something like that, to like every team that had some multi-copy league. And I think somebody accepted the trade, but it's like, that's pretty much the only way you can move him. And it's like, I don't want Derek Carr either, but like, what else can you do?
Dude,
like, what do you do?
Derek Carr balled.
He had a game. He had a game against an awful defense.
And if you have Derek Carr, like, I would probably try to sell him anywhere.
Agreed.
I traded Derek Carr for, man, it was like Freiermuth and a 2nd or something. Like, I was like, oh, I got a Freiermuth in a 2nd. Like, I'm money with that. But I'm also left with not a great QB room. Like, this is one of those teams where it is, I have Dak, which is like my anchor. And then I have Watson and and Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, it's Watson, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Bryce Young. So it's like, I have that one quarterback and it's fantastic, but I might be more beneficial to flex a Tony Pollard or a Najee Harris or somebody even lower than that. Like, I would, throw in anybody. I think at that point in time,
screw it. I'll just roll with the one guy and I'll just maximize my points in other
ways. Yeah. I mean, especially in like a tight end premium league or a league that benefits you in carries. Like, if you have a PPC league, like a 0.22 0.25 PPC is actually pretty common in most leagues that I play in nowadays. So it's not like a dramatic bump, but it's like good enough for somebody like Najee Harris that gets like 20 carries a game. He's guaranteed, 15 points. And that's more than like a Bryce Young or maybe even to Caleb Williams right now, given his scenario. Like Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze are both maybe not playing this week, and it's going to be DJ Moore, and that's it. And I think, Bears fans are probably going to miss Justin Fields a little bit, to be honest with you. And it's like, I think that reality is going to set in because the Bears don't have that system in place to develop that good talent. They're just like the Patriots when it comes to wide receivers. Like any wide receiver that goes there is going to die. Any quarterback that goes to the Bears, gonna die. Like obviously, I think Caleb should have sat for half the year. He should have pulled the Mahomes. Sat for a year. Just sat there, hung out. Justin Fields stays there. Justin Fields has a year. He's throwing to some of the best. He gets Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore. We saw what Justin Fields did with just DJ Moore and whoever, like just the hodgepodge team. If he had those guys, his value goes way, way up. Like he's got an elite offense, and then they have Caleb Williams just hanging out. I don't think Justin Fields develops Caleb Williams, but I think Caleb Williams has a year to just really get adjusted to the game speed of the NFL. Because that's already just an adjustment on its own. You're like coming in and you're like, oh, this is crazy fast. This is way faster than what I'm used to. And then you have to get used to the personnel. You have to get used to the packages, everything that's being called, the way that it's being called. Like everything is, there's not a pause button in the NFL as opposed to college where you're just like constantly just like, okay, going to the sideline. You have the coaches over there helping you out. So it's like, just like him just watching would have benefited him more than just getting thrown in there. And they traded Justin Fields for what? For a Malik Willis? Like Malik Willis got traded for the same amount of value as Justin Fields did. And it's like, what are we doing, man? Like the NFL is insane. It's like the worst dynasty league I've ever seen. They could have kept him, held on to him for half the year, even, and traded him for a first to a team that had a Will Levis or like a dying Russ Wilson. Like they could have got more from the Steelers if they waited a half year. When Justin Fields starts the league and they have to start Mitch Trubisky or whoever the fuck they get from the, sorry for swearing, whoever they get from like, I don't know who they get, but they could have easily been like, okay, here's our leverage. But they did it in the offseason to help Justin Fields, supposedly. And what, dude, like obviously Caleb Williams isn't ready to start because you don't have a system in place for a quarterback. And then you have Justin Fields going for a conditional 7th round pick when we see Malik Willis for the same amount going to go start for a really good organization in the Packers. And it's like Malik Willis might look better than Caleb Williams this week. I'm just calling that right now. And it's crazy, but like you might want to start Malik Willis over Caleb Williams. And that's silly to think, but like it's the reality because the Packers aren't going to put him in a bad position, but the Bears are definitely going to put Caleb Williams in a bad spot.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, to circle back to your question there, Scott, you were asking if we have Caleb Williams and let's say a Tua and a Kirk Cousins or a Deshaun Watson, these highly fluctuating quarterbacks that are currently depressed. There's a couple of thoughts that I had. First, you got to live in reality. What the current quarterback market is what it is. You can't lament what it was.
Sure.
You could have sold Deshaun Watson a year and a half ago, probably as a top 15 quarterback. So there's a lesson to be learned there, right? Yep. Right now it's Kyler Murray for me. I think that he has really rehabilitated his value to a point where he's probably value neutral, if not a sell. And so once you crest that hill, why not look into what you can get on top of Justin Herbert when you sell away Kyler or Joe Burrow? You can get an adder and sort of float between these nebulous phases of quarterback value. Secondly, if nobody is giving you even a third for Deshaun Watson, what you've done is you've identified probably a miscalculation of the market by your league mates. And so you could change your strategy. You could start to incorporate more of these quarterbacks into your build, and you can start to starve out the rest of the league at that tier because they're blind to the fact that you can potentially acquire other quarterbacks for very similar devalued prices. And so you can build a strategy sort of surrounding this, use a volume approach, almost like you might at running back, and do the John Hogue QBX strategy, right? 6, 7, 8 of these guys. And eventually when injuries happen to like Jordan Love, you may have enough pieces to tier into a more elite quarterback or a more productive quarterback or a more value insulated quarterback. And finally, like if you're in this phase where, yeah, you can't contend, but you're stuck with Kirk Cousins, what you have to do is just ride the wave. You cannot sell at a steep discount just because you want to. You have to treat this like a bonsai. Don't take the excavator out to prune the bonsai, like take those tiny little scissors out and just wait.
Yeah.
There will be a moment. These values are going to shift up and down because other quarterbacks are going to get hurt. Kirk Cousins might get hurt, and you just wait one more year. Eventually it's going to come together to where you have a viable sell window. If you're not contending, who cares anyway? Like you have probably another 11 months until this really starts to matter. So what is the rush with you? The rush is with everyone else. You have the leverage at this point.
Interesting. Yeah. So I like that perspective. That's definitely different. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And shit, I love QBX anyway, right? So let's go.
Totally.
Flywheel, baby. Light it up. All right. Well, let's get into our Find Me a Trade for the night, submitted by listener Jim Dickey at JPD_FF on X. League name Hyperflex, team name Different Strokes. This is a 12 team, so it's a little bit different. I picked this one because it's slightly different than what we've done recently. A lot of starters, 12 team, 2 quarterback, 2 tight end. Okay, and then you've got your 2 running back, 3 receiver, and 4 flex for a total of start 13. It's a tiered PPR, so you've got 0.75 for the running backs, 1.25 for the receivers, and then 2.0 for the tight ends, and an additional point per first down for the tight ends. So not only are you starting 2, but then you've got this juiced up scoring here for that. But 12 team, 13 starters, that's a lot. So it's a little bit different than some of the leagues we've looked at recently, and definitely want to talk through some strategy there. I do have the roster pulled up. I think, unless you do, Tommy.
Totally. Yeah, happy to.
Okay,
is this what's the manager's name here? Different Strokes?
Different Strokes. You got it. Yep.
All right. So we're just going to start with players of relevance. We can circle back to some of these other scrubs later if we need to. At quarterback, we've got Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, and Daniel Jones pulling up the rear. Running backs, Devon Achane, J.K. Dobbins back to relevancy, Devin Singletary, Kyron Williams, Jeff Wilson having a pretty decent day today. At wide receiver, Marquise Brown, still injured, Keon Coleman, Tank Dell, Terry McLaurin, Jalen Waddle, and Roman Wilson, if you want to count him. And at tight end, it is Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, and a bunch of scrubs. We've got a few folks on taxi as well, but nobody really moving the needle there.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So basically, he just kind of wants to know with this league, what are our thoughts? What are our strategies? What would we be looking to do? And I certainly have my thoughts. But Tommy, if you want to start, and then we'll move over to our guest.
Yeah, happy to. So I see 29 players on the roster plus 5 taxi in a 12-team start 13, I think you said, Scott.
Yes.
This feels pretty tight. I know it's 29 roster spots with taxi, but this feels like a pretty tight roster requirement for how many players you're going to be starting. So I think it's going to lead to some interesting waiver wire viability all the way down at the dregs, and a complete devaluation of the wide receiver position, in my opinion. If I were to be constructing a team in a vacuum in this format, my wide receiver 2 and 3 would be my worst starters literally every single week. It would just be flyers on random players. in this case, I think the manager should probably lengthen tight end pretty significantly in terms of relevant players, and probably to a lesser degree quarterback as well, because you have to start two. This isn't a super flex league. You've got to start two quarterbacks every single week. And so I think it's going to be pretty difficult to build out that depth. You're going to have to do that over time. So really focus in on quarterback and tight end. Focus all your draft capital almost exclusively on these two positions. Where I see a value weak point is probably at running back, because you only have to start two running backs and there's some flexes beyond. I think that in this format, what I've typically seen is my league mates tend to devalue running backs. I bet you can get a ton of really cheap, meaningful points at the running back position to sort of scaffold your roster and live through the highs and lows of whatever's happening at quarterback and tight end. So yeah, that's where I would try to build up my advantages. Looking at the other teams, they're not rostering almost any running backs either. And looking at the free agents, the waiver wire fodder, the top 10 are almost all wide receivers. So I think I could probably pull from the free agency pool and actually get some meaningful starts. Will they be good players? No, we're talking about like John Mechie level players. But in this deep a format, you could probably start a John Mechie once or twice a year.
Sure.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to cut a few wide receivers. I'm going to cut Dortch. I'm going to cut Tyler Boyd, Zay Jones, Elijah Moore. And I'm going to try to help another manager, Spaceballs, pick a direction. They had a really interesting team where they've got some contending pieces and then they've got some really young pieces, and I want to help them out. And so I'm going to send them essentially two offers on either side of the fence. I'm going to offer up Mark Andrews and Daniel Jones, and I'm going to try to pick up TJ Hawkinson and JJ McCarthy, essentially rebuild for a year. Or they've also got Dak, Spaceballs does. So I'm going to offer Tank Dell and Keon Coleman because they're a little bit weak at wide receiver. And I think that fits their build a little bit better than Dak does currently. So lengthen that quarterback room just a little bit. Mike, the two trades here. What do you think about either or both of these? Do you agree with my assessment of this league as well?
So I am diving into this league for the first time right now. And I got to be honest with you, like I was talking to you backstage, I didn't have any access to the league previously to come on here. Gotcha. So this is all just like kind of fun to like actually assess and go into.
Really fresh perspective.
This guy's name is Different Strokes, correct? He's Different Strokes?
Yep, you got it.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm looking at a lot of teams like just going above right here. This guy's starting wide or quarterbacks are I mean he's got Tua and that's about it. You know, like he has no there's also several teams in here that have nobody. Like there is one quarterback, if that, you know. I am very high on Jaden Daniels. I don't know how you guys feel about him, but I think he's locked in. He's a RG3 type of trajectory when it comes to rookie season. And even if you don't believe in him, you have a window to sell him mid to end of the season anyway. And you could probably tier down and still get somebody like Burrow or somebody. I think he's going to be like even higher than these guys. He's going to be like quarterback 5 or 6 on the year. And then you can go, hey, I'm going to go backwards, but think I'm going forwards. If you think that he's not going to stay healthy, that's on you because you have that idea in your head, but he's going to be a stud. So I think he's locked in. He's got 2 quarterbacks and he's fine, but I don't think he's going to be a immediate contender in this league. There's so many things that he can do. I like your idea of him going straight punt and then going JJ McCarthy and then going for guys that have, you know, the emaciated value, the guys that might not be viewed. Like I traded Will Levis for JJ McCarthy straight up the other day. I just said, hey, take Will Levis. Before he touched the field, I said, here we go. Take Will Levis. And then let's put it together. And like, you know, I'll put my stuff on the table. You put your stuff on the table and let's see what you believe in. And that's what I did. And I think that's whatever you believe in JJ McCarthy, do it. Absolutely. Think it's
or
a
at
great
least
trade.
You buy a year of value insulation. So that'll work too.
Yeah, and then it's, hey, JJ McCarthy's coming back and he's going to be the starting quarterback, and then you assess it after that. I think the
Exactly.
idea is you want to trade for players that are depreciated. You ideally probably could never trade Will Levis for JJ McCarthy. Like nobody was trading Will Levis for the 106 or 107 or whatever JJ McCarthy was going for in a startup super flex league. But now that he's injured, you can.
Yeah.
You could probably trade. You could probably trade Deshaun Watson for JJ McCarthy in a couple of leagues. I'm not even kidding. Like I think it's
I've
very
tried.
possible. Yeah, I bet you tried. You said you tried for a third. I think you could definitely try for that and see what happens. Because JJ McCarthy is a rare guy that, people are like, oh, what if Sam Darnold balls out and he's going to just hold on to that start? It's not going to happen.
Nah.
Trust me. Like Sam Darnold couldn't beat
We know what
Tyrod
he is.
Taylor.
We know what he is.
We know what he's doing. So I mean, I don't hate that. I don't dislike going one team up and going to the Knight Rider because sorry, I'm going from the desktop here, and it's, I mean, obviously we're going MFL, so it is the desktop in general. But
Yeah, Knight Rider has
dude.
just Tua and now basically nobody at quarterback.
Yeah, because I mean, if you've watched the game,
Bo Nix.
Knight Rider, you might not have a quarterback at all. You might be starting nobody.
Does have Bo Nix on taxi, so I guess you'd have to do that.
So you'd have to pull Bo Nix off taxi and then hope that what you just saw from Bo Nix in week 1 is not what you're going to see in Bo Nix week 2 or week 3 or week 4, because
it might be better not starting someone.
You might not even need to start a quarterback. Daniel Jones is locked in with Malik Neighbors. I think that's, if you trade Daniel Jones to this guy, and I'm fine in this setting to not even have a quarterback 3. Like I don't think you need a quarterback 3 in this league at all. Given the landscape, when I'm looking at all these teams, like most of them don't have a quarterback 2.
Yeah.
So if you don't have Daniel Jones in your roster, you don't get a quarterback back, I'm fine with that. Like if you don't get somebody back like a JJ McCarthy, like you could go to Knight Rider and just say like, all right, he's good on running back. Knight Rider has, man, these teams are just rough.
It's a weird
where are we right now? Like why is every team like not looking good? This guy's got Njoku as his tight end 1. Yeah, actually, that's not a great trade partner. His taxi is pretty good though. Actually, he's got Brian Thomas.
Talent. Yeah.
His taxi is better than his roster. And I'm very shocked that there's not a league rule that you can't have your starting players in your taxi, because this guy should be starting Brian Thomas, McConkey,
yeah,
and Bo Nix at this point in time. I'd be going for his taxi. If he's savvy, he's putting those guys in taxi because he thinks that he's gonna get a good pick and he's punting and this and that. If he thinks that rookies are not good, I don't know. Like it's hard to break this trade down, because if this guy's putting them in the taxi because he's just like unaware that they're better than his roster, then I would be trading with this guy. If he's doing it because he's smart and he can get away with it, good for you.
True.
I do like your options. Was it Show Enough?
Yeah.
Decent roster. He's somebody that I would target because he doesn't even have a starting running back on the team. I mean, who is he starting?
Chandler, and
he might be starting Ty Chandler. He might be able to get with the Charbonnet this week if there's a Walker injury.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have a starting running back at all, and this guy has more than enough. So it depends on the league is telling me they don't value running back at all.
Yep.
So it's hard to sell a running back to a league that doesn't care about running back.
True.
What was the point settings in this league? Like, what are we talking about as far as like, is there a
It's
negative?
tiered 0.75 for running back, 1.25 for receiver, and then a full 2 points for tight end plus a point per first down. So tight end is super juiced.
Tight end super juice. This guy actually has nobody. Man, he doesn't have anybody in general, actually. Okay, we're gonna keep moving. So this is fun to watch. To actually look at a league like in real time and just
Right?
talk
I know.
about nonsense,
Isn't it?
and then just like break it down and just. All right, so we're having fun right now. We have Drake May, Will Levis. Oh, he's got Kyler Murray. Oh, he's got CJ Stroud. He's good. He's okay. Magnum PI
Magnum
went
PI,
overboard. Yeah, good for you, Magnum PI. Team is actually the best team that I've seen so far.
It's solid. He's got Brooks on tap. And that's
But he has nobody at tight end.
nothing.
Actually, wait, he's got Brock Bowers. Wait a second. Hold on.
Oh,
He's not
yeah,
interested.
yeah.
He's not interested. He saw what Brock Bowers did his week one.
But he still needs two. Still needs two. You got to start two. You start
Yeah,
Tanner
so
Hudson. I mean, Mo Alley Cox. Come on.
He's maybe a guy that we can build with, right? Like
Yeah.
you look at his roster.
Yeah.
He's pretty stacked at wide receiver. Devonta Smith. He's got T. Higgins. T. Higgins is somebody that I would actually go for on this guy's roster. I think I would actually like go, because obviously people are getting frustrated. T. Higgins didn't practice today. I think he's probably not going to play this week. So I think he's a good trade target.
He's getting called out by
going to move.
the public.
Are we moving Andrews? How do we feel about Andrews right now? Do we feel good? Like if he offered Andrews just straight up for Higgins,
I wouldn't take that. Oh, Andrews,
would you
like by a mile.
Andrews by a mile.
But I'm also like, I'm like, I started
Absolutely.
the Andrews fan club and I still run it today. So yeah, it's going to be tough to get me off him.
But Andrews has no value right now because everyone's like Isaiah Likely is.
Yeah, then apparently they don't know the history of him playing against the Chiefs because literally that is exactly all 5 meetings have gone that way. He's had like 14 yards, 15 yards, 22 yards, and like 56 yards was his best one. Like they shut him down because it's the only guy that Baltimore has. So Casey's like, yo, Spagnuolo knows what's up. He's just going to shut him down, double team him, triple team him. That has been the history. So I'm not too worried. And if you look back, nobody should be surprised by this Likely. Like, where did the OC for the Ravens come from? Where did he come from? Georgia. What have they been doing for years? Tight ends, multiple tight ends, running that 12 personnel, using those guys. So it's like, it's not surprising at all. So I think Mark Andrews, if anything, I'd be buying him versus trying to move him. But in the 2 tight end, I still think he's super valuable because we know what he's capable of.
Yeah, I like Andrews a lot. I think his value is actually depleted, so it's hard to sell somebody in that realm coming off of that game, and then people can create any narrative. So I don't know if that trade that you proposed with JJ McCarthy is even possible. I have no idea what people think. I would love to break down an entire pod of people trading or trading away Mark Andrews and talking about where he lies in the community, because the Ravens are shifting a little bit. Like, we have to admit that we are seeing we went from Hollywood Brown and Andrews to, Zay Flowers, who is definitely way more talented than Hollywood Brown when it comes to NFL standards. And then, we do have a Likely and some ancillary pieces on that team. I mean, it's still not like great, depending on how you view it, especially from a Ravens viewpoint, because it's Flowers, Andrews, Likely. Those are your passing options, and then you have Henry, And then you
Justin
have
Hill, man. That's
jiggling for justice back there too. And that is your team in a nutshell. I mean, you do have some guys on IR that will be coming back, and I think they have juice. But I mean, what do you think? Odell Beckham's going to come back and all of a sudden be catching 8, 9 a game, and there's the team build is questionable. So I think Andrews has to have a role there. I think he's going to be productive. Absolutely.
He will. That'd be fine.
But I think they're always going to be running 2 tight end sets. And I think Andrew's never going to eat the way that he normally eats. So I think Likely's always going to be a part of that because they are thirsty for playmakers right now, right?
Agreed.
Like they have to have Likely on that field to be successful. So it's got to be Likely, Zay Flowers, and Andrews. And those are the guys that are going to be the top producers. And then, the Batemans and the OBJs, and they're gonna catch 2 catches a game.
Nelson Aguilar, come on.
Yeah, I mean Aguilar and Bateman are Hail Marys.
Worthless.
They are. We're gonna get a 40-yard touchdown, maybe one time a game. Aguilar is the king of fuck. We got 2 touchdowns and they're both to Aguilar for like 6 or 7 yards. And we're like, it's an Aguilar week. And then he never touches the ball ever again. And you're like, oh,
in the next 6 games. Yeah.
Like I spent $97 on this guy in Fab like this week. And he hasn't even seen the field, but yeah, this is, I don't know. It's the Ravens, man. We have seen them every year do this where there's nobody. They have their wide receiver 1, and then they have the guys. So we know Zay Flowers is going to be involved, and then, man, we just started talking about the Ravens, and I'm sorry for our friend here that's looking for a trade offer here, but
no, we're good here. I'll jump into mine a little bit because
I hate this league. I hate the league, by the way. I think it's awful. The breakdown's awful. Everything is not good. I would suggest you just.
What about the graphics? The graphics are good.
I know MFL is great, man. I love them. I will always root for MFL like all day. Me and Hap do the eliminators together, so we set it up.
Yep.
And there's a soft place in my heart for John Bosch and everybody like set that up, and it's like I will never let it die, but God, it's just so bad, because you can't break down trades as well. You can't really assess other week. Like
you can't
the way that it's set up.
Trades.
It's crazy because like if you go in a sleeper, I will never say sleeper above MFL, but if you go to a sleeper, you can go into a trade. Like the trade option breaks down the roster, and you can see their quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and you're saying, okay. You can already assess, like you can go down the line, just scroll, and you're like, okay, this guy has 2 tight ends. This guy has 5 tight ends. This guy has 4 tight ends. I'm going for the guy that has 2 tight ends. You already found your trade partner, right? And then you can assess it's in a little neat row. So you click on his team, boom, there it is. You don't have to scroll up and down. And then you go from his team to your team, you scroll back up, and then you scroll back down, and you scroll back up. And it's like, how do you even break down a trade? It's
awful. I have like 4 monitors here, so I've just put a team on every monitor, and then
I have been watching football on my other monitor, so if I was more in tune, I would definitely do that. I get it.
All right, well, I'm on the same page with Tommy. Basically, the way that I would construct this league is to just minimize receivers. I just want maybe 4 or 5 at most. If you're saying like Mike's going to go after Higgins, cool, like go get your Higgins and then have your couple other guys there, and then don't really worry about that. I want to have strength and volume at all 3 other positions. Any RB on a 53 it can be ugly. You can find those starts, but I want to load up at quarterback and tight end and continue to hammer those positions with my draft picks. If you can get anything out of your receivers beyond 4 and 5, I mean, you don't need anything more than a couple innings eaters and a couple starters. So if you can liquidate them, if you can upgrade a pick, whatever, great. Flip them to that team that had all those non-starting running backs. Perfect. Go see if you can sell one of your receivers for, a Zach Charbonnet or something like that. Those are the kind of guys I want on my roster from that standpoint. So interesting that, Mike went to trading Andrews and I did almost the same thing, but I went with trading Pitts just because I feel like Andrews is kind of a little bit safer in this standpoint. And I think Pitts has more value right now. So my option here for Jim is to trade Kyle Pitts to Team Gremlins for Evan Ingram and a 26 first. And I think that trade gets done all day because Evan Ingram is gross. Nobody likes him and he only does well when he's the only guy and whatever. But in a 2 tight end league, he's going to be a starter.
Brother.
Forever.
Brother. I don't know. Hold on. Wait, Evan Ingram's gross? Stop it.
Nobody's like, oh, I am so excited about having Evan Ingram on my team. Like that's why I have all the shares, because I don't care. The guy just scores points, whatever. You can just be on my roster. But when you have to start,
I love it. I love him. I love Evan Ingram. I don't know if he's.
No one has ever said that.
Okay,
this is episode 188. You're the first
Tommy,
one who ever loved Evan Ingram.
Tommy, while you're lounging in your bed, okay. Expanse. Okay, you on mute? No, you're alive. Okay,
I'm here. What you got?
No, I'm checking temps. Give me your temp on Evan Ingram. Like, tell me how you feel about him and why. Because I want to go around the room here. And why are we so sour on Evan? And Evan Ingram finished, I think, 10-3 last year.
And who else was playing the rest of the year for the Jaguars? Literally no one.
People are calling me. Hold on.
So while you pick up your phone, I'm a Jaguars fan, Mike. And so I'm going to take that and I'm going to try my best to set it to the side for the purpose of this conversation. Evan Ingram represents potential volume. That's really all that I see with him. When he was a New York Giant, the big issue was drops. That has really not manifested in Jacksonville over the last couple of years. Pretty decent rapport, but we're looking at 1, possibly 2 more years in Jacksonville. So the situation is going to change. But for the next, 17 weeks and possibly another year, we've got 650 pass attempts to split up in this offense. I love Brian Thomas Jr. I think that he showed a lot more than I was anticipating in week 1. All the underlying metrics are really enticing. There was a bad week with Christian Kirk, but the really interesting thing to me was that Evan Ingram was kind of pulled out of the first read portion of the offense. And that concerns me because that was his strength last year. I'm a little bit lower on Evan Ingram in most formats. In this one, where you get an extra point, I believe, for a first down.
Yep.
That's significant because that leans into what Evan Ingram does well when he does things well. So I am probably somewhere in the middle of you two, where I don't love him, but I see the utility of him in the short term in this specific format. In any other format, I'm not really a believer. There are too many other players that I would prefer to have, like George Kittle, in the same tier with much higher spike weeks. I want the spike weeks at tight end.
Yeah, I agree with that in a sense that, you want the spike weeks. You want these guys that are going to be booming. I think that Ingram does offer you some spike weeks. I think that he will absolutely be that safety blanket to somebody that is not confident enough to throw down the field in every game. I don't think Trevor Lawrence has actually showed us that he can be that guy that is going to overtake and throw on the outside. Trevor Lawrence has never been that guy. I don't think he's ever going to be that guy. I think as a Jaguars fan, you understand that Trevor Lawrence folds into himself much like a Tua, in the sense that he's going to be somebody that plays into the game script and then doesn't overtake the game script. He's not a Josh Allen. He's not a Mahomes. He is Trevor Lawrence, and he's in that same realm of, like, he is Tua. Like, he's had these games before that we're watching right now where he's like, okay, I'm going to throw it on the outside. I'm going to get intercepted. I'm going to go inside of myself and not be able to throw on the outside anymore. I'm going the inside. I'm going to go in my second look. I'm not going to my third look because I don't have enough time to go to my third look. So he goes 1, 2, stops. 1, 2, stops. Tua goes 2, 1, stops. 2, 1, stops. And it's like crazy to watch these guys play side by side because you can play Tua film and T-Law film and you can see the same player because they can't go through all three of their reads. And if they have 4 reads, like they might actually have right now with Ingram, BTJ, Gabe Davis, and Kirk, I think they're all getting playing time at the same time. So he can't go through 4 reads at all. He has no ability to even go through 3 reads most of the time. So Ingram's always a second read. And I think BTJ might be his first read sometimes. Now, I mean, I agree with you that BTJ is somebody that is super talented, more talented than Kirk, but it was Kirk, Ingram, I think BTJ, and then Davis. But I think Davis is so far out that if he goes all the way left and looks, he's got Davis on his first read. So I think it depends on where the defense is coming from, but he's not a good quarterback right now. And he's not where we think he's supposed to be. So I think he's never going to go through everything. And that's why Ingram is going to be good. And it's exactly why we saw on the Commanders last year, where these guys in the middle, like the Curtis Samuels and stuff, like Howell could never go through all of his reads. So he just went to the middle and these guys ate it up. And Curtis Samuel was like, at one point, wide receiver 13, 14, and he was just killing it. And you're like, why the hell is Dotson dead? Because he can't go to Dotson because Dotson is his third read and he can't make it all the way to the third read. So he's like stuck in the second. And I think that's exactly where T-Law is going to be. Stuck in second gear, stuck in the middle. He can't look all the way to the left in time because he can't process the field as well as he should. That's why I like him. Why do you not like him, Scott?
Okay. As a market view, I believe the market thinks he's gross. No one has ever been excited about Evan Ingram. That is why I roster quite a bit of him, because I'm willing to take him and plug him in especially in these premium leagues. So that's my whole point here is we're going to move off the sexy name of Pitts. And then we're going to get somebody who may score just as well, to be honest with you. Maybe the touchdown upside isn't there. That's probably where I think Pitts has the advantage. But you get that 26 first on top and the roster that you're trading with. I think that guy's in like a win now window. He has Kelsey. He can pair him with Pitts. He's got the now and the future. But the rest of his team is really thin. And I think by that 26 first could end up being really valuable even before we get there, because other teams will begin to see like, okay, yeah, this team is probably all in for this year and pretty screwed in the future. So I just like acquiring those assets. Basically, I'm just replacing the points and then still picking up something else. Ingram is not valued anywhere near Pitts, like in any trade anywhere. Like, so that's what I mean by that is like you can always get Ingram because he's gross. Like nobody cares. Right. But like to your point, like, no, the dude can score points. I mean, I have many teams last year where I started him like in a flex in these heavy tight end premium leagues. I was fine starting him down the stretch. He won me a couple championships. So like, I'm totally good with it. But sometimes when we're making the trades, it's like, the sexy names are always going to be the guys like, oh, if you're going to go out and make a trade, if you're going to give up a first, like you want that name. So you're fine giving up Evan Ingram, So like, that's where I think if you go down that path, it makes sense.
Where do you guys stand on Kyle Pitts? Like as a dynasty asset, as somebody that is going to, like, he's already in the realm of a Scary Terry, as a DJ Moore, these guys that we're like, if he only had somebody throwing the ball, like if he only had this, if he only had that. The idea is like he's already that elite talent, but we have seen that. Like Evan Ingram was drafted as an elite talent. He was like a Kyle Pitts at one point in time. We were like, okay, this guy is the guy. Like everyone was like, okay, here we go. We got this guy. We're going. And it took him what? Year 5, year 6 to actually see a boost in talent, to see somebody that he already had that, but like he was injured. We see Kyle Pitts in that same trajectory where it's like he's his best case scenario is at Evan Ingram. Like at this point in time, like you want him to be Evan Ingram ultimately because he has started the same way where he had Evan Ingram. Look at his rookie year. Fantastic. And then he was like injured, struggling.
Yeah, a lot of
do
parallels.
this, couldn't do that. And then he got traded. I think he actually just like got moved. I don't even remember what happened with him. Was he traded? I don't even remember. But he was
a free agent. He signed as a free agent.
He was a free agent. Yeah. So he went over to Jacksonville and he just boomed, he always flashed just like we saw Kyle Pitts. Like, do you guys think that he is way above Evan Ingram talent wise and that we're just going to see this guy skyrocket? Or do you think that he is Evan Ingram at this point in time?
The difference between the two is not so much the players themselves. It's the other potentially elite players at tight end that you can get into. When you were drafting Kyle Pitts, the rookie, when you saw the 1,000-yard season from Kyle Pitts, the rookie, he was a rare profile. There weren't a lot of elite tight ends. It was Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, maybe Darren Waller. Like that was pretty much it. Now we can extend that list by 3 or 4 more potentially elite tight ends. And so he starts to blend in more. So if the position were as rare as it was when Evan Ingram was in his 3rd or 4th year, yeah, I would advocate for possibly scaffolding a little bit further with Kyle Pitts. Now you don't have to. Now you can get into Dalton Kincaid. You can get into Sam Laporta. You can get into Trey McBride. You can stick with the old guys. There's a lot more optionality that didn't exist at that time.
I don't know. I'm remembering that time differently because Gronkowski was probably the tight end 1 at that point in time. Kelce was tight end 2. We were looking at people kind of all over the, like Tony Gonzalez was still kind of relevant at that point in time. There was a good amount of tight ends and oh my God, like if we go even deeper in that realm, who was, man, I'm thinking Saints.
Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy Graham was
Gronk,
still
Kelce, Ertz, Graham, and Ingram was your top 5 from that season, basically 2017
from his rookie year.
Yeah, his rookie year, and then you had
so that was his rookie year.
Delaney Walker types, and Jason Witten was still kicking around, and then you had like the Hunter Henry, not the athlete, but more the inline guy, and Jack Doyle and guys like that. So yeah, I mean there weren't many athletes, right?
Yeah, I think it's at this point in time, I think the tight end position has changed a little bit. You have to be athletic to play tight end. You have to be like somebody that is, like we want to say, like who is an athletic tight end that really hasn't panned out?
Chig Okonkwo.
I mean, Chig is a stud in the sense that he's going to be, like Greg Dulcich, for example. Like he is somebody that we've seen him flash every time he's been on the field.
Can't say healthy.
Can't stay healthy, right? And that's the problem that we see in tight ends in general, and that's what we see in Pitts. He just can't stay healthy. But like when we see him healthy, he's great, and I think really like how you become a great tight end is like health. Like Kelce is fine, like he's great. He's attached to one of the best quarterbacks ever, but isn't like the best tight ends in the world. Don't they just have the best quarterback in the world? Like, wasn't Jimmy Graham attached to Drew Brees? Wasn't Gronkowski attached to Brady? Now we have Kelce attached to Mahomes, and what Kincaid might be fantastic. Actually, he hasn't really done much this season, but we hope that Kincaid's going to be great attached to Allen. I think that the tight end position is really all about how good your quarterback is. If your quarterback is great, your tight end is great. And yeah, there's outliers. There's players that do produce because it's they're the only ones, like Pitts his rookie year. Who the hell were they throwing the ball to at that point in time? I mean, there are spots where these guys will flash, but like there's been elite tight ends for 1 year everywhere, all over the place, you know, like these guys, they flash in a pan for 1 year and then they just die. I remember Trey Burton on Chicago was fantastic for 1 year, you know, like these guys will kill it for 1 year and then they'll just go nowhere. I mean, Pitts has been great for 1 year, and we're just holding out hope for him to be like this forever savior. Like he's elite freak talent.
I mean, he's
when it comes to athletic ability. He's still a young kid. He could be, he could definitely be a stud. He could be an Evan Ingram at some point, I think.
Well, I mean, I think that about sums up our night right there, man. I love it. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. See, you could just put the junkies and the degens together, and it'll all work out somehow, right?
Yes. Yes.
Appreciate you being here, man. Why don't you tell everybody one more time where they can find you, and give this man a follow, please. Check out his material. Everything is fantastic, top notch. One of our all-time favorite guests here.
Scott, Tommy, I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate you having me on. Yes, I am with Dynasty Degens. You can follow us on Twitter. We have a Discord, which is Dynasty Degens, and it's free to the public. We have trade offers, trade help, breakdowns of rosters, whatever it is that you need. Our team is available to kind of help you out with that, much like you guys do. And, you know, I appreciate everything that you guys do in the space. We do have a couple podcasts. We have Dynasty Degens, Devi Degens, another fantasy show. And then, like I said, we are partnered with Player Profiles. So you can find all of our stuff over there in their little bubble. And then we have a Devi show with them directly. So we're all over the place, and it's been fun, and I've been taking steps back, hoping that I can remove myself from direct content and then just kind of help out in the background. But
awesome,
it's so hard to walk away from, man. I love this. I can't not be part of podcasts and just having fun and meeting people. So like I said, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
No doubt. Awesome, man. Well, another great night. All around. You know, football's on, so we can't ever complain about that. And we'll get out of here week 2. We've got some good shows coming up, some more good guests on the line. Definitely, guys need to submit some more FMATs. We do have a bunch here to choose from, so we got some, but always need those submissions coming in. Don't forget to follow Dynasty Junkies, Trade Addicts, DAP Network, everybody, anywhere and everywhere you can, at Dynasty Junkies, at Dynasty FF Addict, at Scott_Sidlow, at FF Tommy B, at Andrew Hall FF, and of course at DAP Network. Any rate and reviews would be appreciated too. We love growing this thing. We love helping people, and you know, always once a junkie, always a junkie, baby. So with that, for Tommy B, for Nerd Boy Takes, I'm Scott Sidlow. Junkies out.